Thank you for choosing Tox News, your only source into good faith civil discourse. I'm your host, a leftist made of straw. And we've got a lot to get through, so we begin quickly with the Pledge of Allegiance, the Tox News way. I pledge allegiance to liberty and justice for all. And when I say all, I mean virtually all. As many who want it. So, a lot to get through. A couple of video segments, I think like 3 of them. 2 from Fox News and 1 from PragerU. But I wanted to begin because we haven't covered Matt Gaetz in a little bit, so I wanted to get that out of the way from a new report with from the Daily Beast entitled Bombshell Letter. Gaetz paid for sex with minor, wingman says. Yes. So, apparently, and this was reported like 2 days ago, it seems. The Daily Beast has obtained a confession letter that Joel Greenberg wrote after asking Roger Stone to help him obtain a pardon. A confession letter written by Joel Greenberg in the final months of the Trump presidency claims that he and close associate Representative Matt Gaetz paid for sex with multiple women, as well as a girl who was 17 at the time. Quote, on more than one occasion, this individual was involved in sexual activities with several of the other girls, the congressman from Florida's 1st Congressional District, and myself, unquote, Greenberg wrote in reference to the 17-year-old. Quote, from time to time, gas, money, or gifts, rent, or partial tuition payments were made to several of these girls, including the individual who was not yet 18. I did see the acts occur firsthand, and Venmo transactions, Cash App, or other payments were made to these girls on behalf of the congressman. Unquote. Scathing, damning, and quite a revealing letter this is, highlighting how Matt Gaetz probably guilty. The letter, which the Daily Beast recently obtained, was written after Greenberg, who was under federal indictment, asked Roger Stone to help him secure a pardon from then-President Donald Trump. A series of private messages starting in late 2020, also recently obtained by the Daily Beast, shows a number of exchanges between Greenberg and Stone conducted over the encrypted messaging app Signal, with communications set to disappear. However, Greenberg appears to have taken screenshots of a number of their conversations. Oh my. Wow, way to keep your own incriminating evidence. Quote, if I get you $250,000 in Bitcoin, would that help? Or is this not a financial matter? Unquote. Greenberg wrote to Stone. One message shows, quote, I understand all of this and have taken it into consideration, Stone replied. I will know more in the next 24 hours. I cannot push too hard because of the nonsense surrounding pardons. Unquote. Another quote from Stone here. I hope you are prepared to wire me $250,000 because I'm feeling confident. Stone wrote to Greenberg on January 13th. Literally 8 days before Trump was to leave office. In a text message to the Daily Beast, Stone said that Greenberg had tried to hire him to assist with a pardon, but he denied asking for or receiving payment or interceding on his behalf. He did, however, confirm he had Greenberg prepare a document explaining his prosecution. In the private text messages to Stone, which is weird because Stone is like just lying. He denied asking for or receiving payment when, apparently here's this message specifically said, I hope you're prepared to wire me $250,000. So Stone sticking true to his guns of just being a liar. The article continues. In the private text messages to Stone, Greenberg described his activities with Gaetz, repeatedly referring to the Republican congressman by his initials MG or as Matt. Quote, my lawyers that I fired know the whole story about MG's involvement. This is what Greenberg wrote to Stone on December 21st. Quote, they know he paid me to pay the girls and that he and I both had sex with a girl who was underage. Unquote. Yikes. Ooh, there's way too much evidence in these messages between Greenberg and Stone. Greenberg not being very subtle whatsoever with Roger Stone is like, hey, we committed crimes. We really need a pardon from the president. How do I get a pardon from the president? Is money of any value here? Like, this is obviously pay to play. So, as part of the effort to obtain a pardon, Greenberg wrote multiple drafts of his confession letter. Yikes. The Daily Beast obtained 2 typed versions and an earlier handwritten one. Certified forensic document examiner and handwriting expert Wendy Carlson compared the letter to writing samples obtained through 2 public records requests. She said it was her professional expert opinion that the person who authored a 2019 financial disclosure for Joel Greenberg, as well as Greenberg's 2020 Board of Elections form, was the same as the author of the letter. Quote, the person who authored the forms has been identified as the person who authored the letter, Carlson said. In those letters, Greenberg detailed his relationship with Gates. He confessed to paying young women for sex, and he claimed that he, Gates, and others had sex with a minor they believed to be 19 at the time. Greenberg said he learned she was underage on September 4th, 2017, from an anonymous tip and quickly contacted Gates. Quote, immediately I called the congressman and warned him to stay clear of this person and informed him she was underage. Greenberg wrote, quote, he was equally shocked and disturbed by this revelation, unquote. Greenberg continued in the handwritten draft that he confronted the then 17-year-old and explained to her, quote, how serious of a situation this was, how many people she put in danger, unquote. This is all her fault. Quote, she apologized and recognized that by lying about her age, she endangered many people, he continued. There was no further contact with this individual after her 18th birthday. Oh man, this is just too much, unquote. I can't believe I haven't seen anything as far as like news reporting on this beyond this article and one that I think Vogue just reprinted of the Daily Beast, or was it Vanity Fair? I think it was Vanity Fair, but these are the only, like, Vanity Fair re-reported this article from the Daily Beast, and I've seen little to no actual mainstream coverage. But after she reached the age of legal consent in Florida, Greenberg reestablished contact. As the Daily Beast previously reported, about 5 months after her 18th birthday, Gatz sent Greenberg $900 in 2 Venmo transactions, one titled Test and the other titled Hit Up Blank. The blank contained a nickname for this girl, and Greenberg paid her and 2 other women a total of $900 about 6 hours later. In his confession letter, Greenberg also admitted he facilitated Gates's interactions with college students and paid them on his behalf. All right, you know, even if they're legal age, this is just indication that Matt Gaetz likes them fairly young. So, you know, this is very laughable information going on here, but just damning evidence towards pretty obvious guilt. Quote, all of the girls were in college or post-college, and it was not uncommon for either myself or the congressman to help any one of these girls financially, whether it was a car payment, a flight home to see their family, or something as simple as helping pay a speeding ticket, unquote, Greenberg wrote. Yeah, this is actually just even obvious prostitution. And it's very funny to me, you know, how Republicans and conservatives come off as these virtuous, pious, clean cut individuals who wear a suit and tie and are very professional, and yeah, engaging in prostitution, under the table, illegal prostitution, that also crossed the line of having sex with a minor. So a partial record of Greenberg's Venmo and Cash App transactions suggests that payments were usually for a lot more than gas money. The Daily Beast identified more than 150 Venmo payments from Greenberg to women, as well as more than 70 additional payments on the Cash App that were generally between $300 and $500, though some exceeded $1,000. The Daily Beast also talked to 12 of the more than 40 different women who received money, and they all said they understood Greenberg was paying them, at least in part, for sex. Greenberg, a disgraced local politician in Florida, currently faces a sweeping 33-count indictment that ranges from stalking to sex trafficking. Where are you at, QAnon people? Where are you at? In March, the New York Times revealed that the initial investigation into the Seminole County tax official expanded as agents looked into his role in arranging paid sexual encounters for his friend, Matt Gaetz. Federal prosecutors have not criminally charged Gaetz or even publicly confirmed the expansion of their probe. While Gaetz acknowledges the existence of the investigation, he denies having sex with an underage teen. But at some point, Greenberg began to cooperate with investigators, a development his lawyer has suggested poses a serious problem for Gaetz. That defense lawyer, Fritz Scheller, declined to comment for the story, citing attorney-client privilege. Gates's office did not respond. However, Logan Circle Group, an outside public relations firm Gates has hired, sent the following statement, quote, Congressman Gates has never paid for sex, nor has he had sex with a 17-year-old as an adult. We are now 1 month after your outlet and others first reported such lies, and no one has gone on record to directly accuse him of either. Politico, however, has reported Mr. Greenberg threatening to make false accusations against others, which seems noteworthy for your story, and in fact sounds like the entirety of your story. Congressman Gates has had no role in advocating for or against a pardon for Greenberg, and doubts such a pardon was ever even considered. Unquote. Matt Gaetz is honestly, and his firm, are hoping that everybody forgets that Matt Gaetz himself also asked for a pardon before Trump left office. So, let's just hope everybody really forgets a lot of details of this story, and Matt Gaetz can kind of absolve himself through misleading lies. Because it's very funny to me, because in the Signal apps from messaging from Greenberg to Roger Stone, there is a pretty obvious indictment of Congressman Matt Gaetz. So that's really just this is just so amazing. Like it's very amazing, because it says here that he wrote in reference to the 17-year-old here specifically. On more than one occasion, this individual is involved in sexual activities with several of the other girls, the congressman from Florida 1st Congressional District, and myself. So, yeah, it's great that the firm will deny that anybody has pointed a finger at Matt Gaetz when indubitably they have. So let's see here. Let's go back to where I was at. Scroll. Here we are. The Politico article referred to in the statement does not say Greenberg was threatening to make false accusations against others, but does say that an associate claimed Greenberg had warned friends that, quote, everyone is going to need a lawyer, unquote. Yeah, because everybody associated with Greenberg and this activity specifically was doing illegal things. So, neither the U.S. Secret Service nor federal prosecutors with the Middle District of Florida would provide comment for this article either, citing a policy of not confirming or denying the existence of an ongoing investigation. In the final months of the Trump presidency, Greenberg and Stone exchanged several texts about a pardon over the encrypted messaging app Signal. While images show that the pair frequently sent messages to automatically delete, Greenberg regularly took screenshots of their communications. Stone, who received a presidential commutation last July, but at the time had not been pardoned, communicated with Greenberg for months about the latter's desire for a pardon. The messages show that in November, the pair discussed putting together a document which later took the form of a confession letter and background missive about all the ways in which Greenberg had been loyal to Trump. In their early conversations, Greenberg told Stone that the letter was about 8 to 10 pages and asked if it should be shortened. No, Stone replied, use as much space as you need to tell the story fully, but be certain to include your leadership for Trump prominently, unquote. Greenberg almost immediately responded that he had, quote unquote, killed himself for Trump, and I've killed myself for Matt, Greenberg also said. And then there's pictures of the Daily Beast includes some of those screenshots. Let's see here. Let's see if I can read some of them. Several calls made to Roger Stone. Roger Stone also said one day, today is the day. We will know by the end of the day. I think you sent me some document, but it disappeared. I hope you are prepared to wire me $250,000 because I'm feeling confident. Some more of the screenshots here. Greenberg says January 21st. And while I have not had any communication with MG, he absolutely has to know that the sex charge they hit me with would be what they would hit him with. All he has to do is explain to POTUS the situation and his exposure, and it would be very easy to do. MG is like a son to POTUS. MG is like a brother to me. This is all Matt Gaetz. Roger Stone replies, "Have you attempted to communicate this to MG Schumark?" To MG question mark? Oh, he obviously uses the voice option for the text messages and meant question mark, and the device heard Schumark apparently. So Greenberg responds, "No, I need you to do this. Honestly, I would have thought MG, Matt Gaetz, would have reached out to me or tried via a third party. You need to stress to him the severity of all this. One conversation with POTUS and he can get this done, and it all goes away. I did reach out to his lawyer, Hank Cox." And then it says here, another conversation between Stone and Greenberg. "But Roger, come January 21st, I have to do what's best for me and my family. I know you understand. This is my life. I've got 2 young kids. You think MG is going to come visit me in prison? Question mark. If I get you 250,000 in Bitcoin, would that help, or is this not a financial matter?" Roger Stone replies, "I understand all of this and have taken it into consideration. I will know more in the next 24 hours. I cannot push too hard because the nonsense surrounding pardons." Which, the nonsense being Trump shouldn't just be throwing pardons out for all his political buddies, but here we are. Yeah, those are the screen caps. Looking pretty bad for Matt Gaetz and Greenberg, honestly. The letter went through multiple drafts and detailed Greenberg's encounters with Gaetz, but it also focused on Greenberg's early support of Trump's run in 2016, such as posting a Super Trump highway billboard on Interstate 4. A version of the letter actually includes the image Greenberg used for the billboard, really trying to, send home to Trump here, like, "Hey, remember me? I was your bestest friend out in the 4th District of Florida. Remember me? Hey, loyal guy over here. Can you throw a loyal guy a pardon?" That's awesome. On November 20th, 2020, Stone told Greenberg he had received the document and would show it to the team that got me my commutation. Quote, I will review it with them and give you a budget. This is very doable, and the time is now," Stone wrote. I think there was even an accusation earlier that Rudy Giuliani was going around and telling people that Trump would give them a pardon, I think for $1 million or something like that. I can't remember how much they were charging for that. Let me see if I can Google it real quick before finishing this article. Let's see. Let's see here. Google. All right, so January 17th, 2021, coming from Business Insider, Giuliani associate said Trump pardon cost $2 million. Yeah. Trump associates being paid huge sums to secure pardons in final days of office. Yeah. Yep. So, yeah. At least as far as we know, a former CIA officer had to pay $2 million in order to get their pardon. But I thought I had seen a much more extensive article, but it seems to be eluding the top results of Google. Does nope. Yeah, so as far as I can find so far was the former CIA who paid $2 million to get a pardon from Trump. But, look into that further. I remember a news story specifically talking about Rudy Giuliani asking for money from people in order to receive a Trump pardon. But that was so long ago. What 4 months feels like is 4 years now. So anyways, the article continues. An update from Stone came just after midnight on December 8th. Quote, "Your thing is being looked at, and I will have an answer by Saturday as to whether you have a viable shot for justice and how to go about it." Unquote. "Thank you so much, Roger," Greenberg replied. "I am very thankful for you. I pray that the Lord will help. I remain optimistic and will wait to hear back from you." Unquote. Stone quickly sought to dampen expectations surrounding the whole pardon circus. Quote, "This is treacherous territory with a lot of different players, such as Jared and Giuliani, playing a hand, Stone wrote, presumably referring to Trump advisor Jared Kushner and the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Quote, I have two things I'm trying to get done. Sit tight, unquote. On December 21st, Greenberg told Stone that government investigators were pressing him to cooperate. The, quote, the FBI, DOJ, Secret Service, and a bunch of people from D.C. have repeatedly made attempts to meet with me, with my blank lately. I think it was meant to be lawyer. I have declined, but they are definitely ramping up pressure, unquote. Quote, they want me to flip, Greenberg said. They have made offers which I've declined. I even fired my lawyers this week because they tried to convince me to cooperate and that a pardon was impossible, unquote. Greenberg then revealed to Stone that his former lawyers were aware of the whole story regarding Matt Gaetz' role. Quote, my lawyers that I fired know the whole story about MG's involvement. They know he paid me to pay the girls and that he and I both had sex with the girl who was underage. So naturally, they think that is my golden ticket, unquote. That's what Greenberg wrote to Roger Stone, which is not the best thing you want, the prosecutors to know. Quote, and while I have not had any communication with MG, Matt Gaetz, he absolutely has to know that the sex charge they hit me with would be what they would hit him with, Greenberg continued. So the article says here, a distressed Greenberg told Stone that he felt abandoned by his allies, but emphasized that Gaetz, who was like a son to the President of the United States, could save him. Quote, one conversation with POTUS and he can get this done and it all goes away, unquote. Maybe there was a significant amount of time here that Matt Gaetz really didn't do anything about this and maybe actually could have preemptively prepared for the accusations other than saying that he was being, blackmailed? So, or extortion? He said that somebody else was extorting him for money to make these charges go away. So, let's see here. Greenberg said that while he had discussed pardons with Gaetz' lawyer, he had not heard a reply and would, quote, have to do what's best for me and my family, unquote, after Trump left office. Quote, you think MG is going to come visit me in prison? He said, then proposed the $250,000 Bitcoin deposit. Stone replied that he had considered those points, but, quote, cannot push too hard because of the nonsense surrounding pardons, unquote. As Trump neared his final days in office, he signaled an intent to issue a wave of pardons, and reports at the time suggested legal reprieve could be had for the right price. Stone communicated with Greenberg about his efforts to navigate the heavy traffic of pardon seekers. On December 23rd, Trump pardoned Stone for the crimes from his 2019 conviction. The next day on Christmas Eve, Stone acknowledged to Greenberg that he was having difficulty with the Gaetz dimension. Quote, it is hard for me to understand why Matt Gaetz would do nothing. Yes, he is potentially damaged if the matter goes forward, Stone wrote. The three men, Greenberg, Stone, and Gaetz, all shared a friendship dating back several years, and Stone apparently couldn't figure out why Gaetz wouldn't help Greenberg get a pardon. But on the morning of January 13th, Greenberg received this text from Stone. Quote, today is the day. We will know by the end of the day. I think you sent me some document, but it disappeared. I hope you are prepared to wire me $250,000 because I am feeling confident, unquote. There was only a week left in the Trump presidency. It's unclear if money was ever exchanged, but Greenberg offered to pay extra if Stone could, in fact, get him a pardon. If you can get this done today, I'll add another $50K, Greenberg texted Stone. So, in a subsequent message, Stone wrote that White House lawyer Pat Cipollone had taken Greenberg's name out of the list of hundreds of people who might be pardoned. Cipollone didn't respond to multiple requests for comment Thursday, but according to three people familiar with the matter, Greenberg's name repeatedly made it to the Trump White House for a presidential pardon. The Daily Beast was shown an image of one such list, and Greenberg's name and a favorable mini profile were indeed included. Administration officials swiftly shot down Greenberg's application, however, and several senior White House officials at the time said they were not even aware that Stone was involved in a behind-the-scenes maneuvering. Oh my god. Oh, this is just so, it is so obvious that, Trump became president and, all of his, closest allies and people around the circle just absolutely exploited the position. Amazing. But as Stone explained, in a January 30th text, a full 10 days after Trump left office, Gates was partly to blame? Oh, quote, "What I don't understand is why MG would not help me at all and actually told me not to help you, which I tried to do anyway. In the end, it would not have mattered. Cipollone killed everything we wanted to get done, and that includes stuff MG wanted," Stone wrote, immediately clarifying that. Okay. Another quote here from Greenberg. Okay, he actually said not to help me? Wow. Quote, from Stone, "If you repeat it, you're really going to hurt me." Unquote. This is from Greenberg here. "I won't, Roger. I don't and haven't talked to him. I won't," Greenberg said. Oh, man, this is obviously some serious drama going on in some inner circles. Stone acknowledged Thursday night that there may be, quote, "copies of correspondence between me and Mr. Greenberg," unquote, but he questioned whether they were complete, unedited, or accurate, which obviously he didn't know that Greenberg was the one here making those copies with screenshots. So that's awesome. Quote, "I made no formal or informal effort in regard to a pardon for Mr. Greenberg," Stone said, which obviously at this point of the article, we know he's lying. Quote, "I recall requesting a document explaining his prosecution, the blank details of which I was unfamiliar with," unquote. Again, just lying. Just lying. At this point, we've gone through the messages. He's well aware of the allegations, what the pardon is for, and how much money it would take to get that pardon. And yet. So another quote here from Roger Stone. "I never requested or received a penny from Mr. Greenberg." Lie. "I recall him offering to retain me, and I declined." Lie. "To be clear, I did advocate pardons for a number of people who had been unfairly treated by the justice system, and was compensated by no one for doing so." I'm just going to say that's probably a lie. Quote, "Urge you to be very careful," Stone said at the end of his text. Quote, "I will take any appropriate legal action in the event that you publish anything that is false or defamatory. Sounds to me like you have been presented some kind of cut and paste record," unquote. That is Roger Stone ending the article here, saying, "I will pursue any legal opportunity I have to destroy you if anything that is false or defamatory comes out," which, a lot of this is pretty defamatory, so I wouldn't be surprised if Roger Stone follows through on those accusations and still loses the court case, but still. This is, they're guilty. I don't even, after reading all of this, Matt Gaetz might possibly be screwed. And there's not much for Greenberg unless, he continues to just divulge information on everybody he was interacting with, throwing them under the bus so that he himself can get a lesser charge, a better deal from the prosecutors. So, good for you, Greenberg. Staying slimy, staying on brand there. Oh, boy. So, after discussing some of the, let's say, bad habits of the Republican side of the spectrum here, we've got a little bit more to get into because Rudy Giuliani's apartment was raided, which seems to be a part of an investigation started by Bill Barr's Department of Justice just before leaving office, and seems to have something specific to do with Rudy Giuliani, the Trump campaign, and Ukraine. And if you recall, back in 2019, there was a specific phone conversation between Trump and the president of Ukraine, which led to Trump's second impeachment trial of whether or not he was exploiting them to get political dirt on Joe Biden. So I'm not very privy to the specifics of what they're probing Rudy Giuliani for, but nonetheless, Rudy Giuliani took the opportunity immediately after his apartment and home and office were raided to go on Tucker Carlson and explain his side of the case. Now, usually I approach every video segment cold, but this one I watched and I thought to myself, there's no way that I can't not do this for the podcast. The only thing is I did take a 2 days off to kind of marinate on this video. I didn't watch it anymore. I just kind of let it hit me when I watched it, and then just sat in that air for a couple of days before I recorded this podcast, because I don't like going in too prepared for things. So let's get as cold of a take as we can, and do that right now. So we begin with this ridiculous interview.
Now, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani just learned that lesson the hard way yesterday when federal agents raided his home and took his files. By our count, Rudy Giuliani is at least the third attorney to have his personal communications with former President Donald Trump seized by the Justice Department. Sense a theme here? Rudy Giuliani joins us to tell us what happened. Mr. Mayor, thanks so much.
You sense a theme here? That the government keeps targeting Trump's lawyers? They must be persecuting him. Like, not that, like, Trump's lawyers are continually getting caught with their hand in the illegal honeypot. No, they're always just targeting Trump. It's not that any illegal activity could be going on. No, he is a political prisoner to persecution. You know, just that conservative victimhood is always applied to Trump. Like, they never wanted him to be president. He was so dangerous to the status quo, and it's all a lie. It's all a lie to build this, like, manufactured dissent that Trump was this, agitator to the system. He was an agitator to the polarization of America, which he successfully did, and which we're all dealing with the aftermath of at this point, but just wanted to point that out.
Much for coming on. Now, if you'd been reading the Twitter feed of the Lincoln Project, the Democratic hacks who got Joe Biden elected, you would have known that federal agents were about to raid your home. They knew before you did, but apparently you weren't. Tell us what happened yesterday.
Well, about 6 o'clock in the morning, there was a big bang, bang, bang on the door, and outside were seven FBI agents.
Can you believe it? 7.
For electronics. And I looked at the warrant, and I said, this is extraordinary, because I've offered to give these to the government and talk it over with the government for 2 years. I don't know why they have to do this. The agents seemed somewhat apologetic, I might say. They were.
So if Rudy was willing to offer this evidence for 2 years, then one could assume this investigation has been going on for 2 years. And who was president during that time? Who was the secretary, or who was the attorney general at the time? No, that's right. It was the Trump administration. So it's very weird to play this off as political persecution when the investigation started under those who were being persecuted. Very weird.
Very, very professional and very gentlemanly. The only time they got perturbed is at the end of the surge, when they had taken about, I'd say, 7 or 8 electronic items of mine, which is what they took, and 2 of someone else's. They weren't taking the 3 hard drives, which, of course, are electronic devices. They just mimic the computer. I said, well, don't you want these? And they said, what are they? I said, those are Hunter Biden's hard drives. And they said, no. I said, are you sure you don't want them? I mean, the warrant required them to take it. And they said, no. And one last time I said, don't you think you should take it to and they said no. Now,
oh my God. Like, just the whole framing of that. Like, he made it sound like the FBI was absolutely allergic to those hard drives because it had Hunter Biden's information on them. So, like, of course, in the middle of him defending himself, he has to throw the punching bag of conservatism under the bus, which is Hunter Biden. Because what relevancy whatsoever does this investigation into you, Rudy Giuliani, have to do with Hunter Biden? I will tell you, probably none. And so them not wanting the hard drives containing information on Hunter Biden not being relevant to their warrant or their investigation, why they would turn that down makes complete sense. But if you'll notice how he says they said no, which was like, no. Like, as if it was like poison he was trying to hand to them. That it's just, it's that framing. It's implied that they were that resistant into taking Hunter Biden information, as if, like, again, this persecution of Trump and his allies being a part of the Democratic push for holding power forever, as if Rudy Giuliani has no illegal activity to be held accountable for. And we'll find out more as this story develops, but I just find it very interesting here, the framing of this. And within, let's see, 2 minutes of this beginning, Hunter Biden is thrown under the bus.
Hunter Biden's hard drives fall within the scope of the subpoena. The subpoena required them to take all electronics, but they decided to leave that.
All electronics relevant to the investigation. Now, I don't know that for sure because I haven't seen the subpoena, but if it was all electronics, would they then have to take Rudy Giuliani's television? Would they have to take his if he has a wired, a phone line? Would they have to take that phone? Would they have to take his toaster? That's an electronic. So, obviously he's being extremely vague because this helps him throw Hunter Biden under the bus, but there's no point that a subpoena would say all electronics, because then they would literally have to take, his back massager, for all I know. Like, no, Rudy, no.
Behind. And they also were completely content to rely on my word that these were Hunter Biden's hard drives. I mean, they could have been Donald Trump's. They could have been Vladimir Putin's.
So even more to just not even buy Rudy Giuliani's story here, that he even offered these hard drives in the first place. Like, honestly, because of the fact that they would not know for sure whether or not Hunter Biden's information would be on those hard drives. If they saw hard drives, they probably would take them, as they would potentially have information they need that is relevant to their investigation. But since they're taking his word for it, it's still that part of this idea that, Hunter Biden is the untouchable because Joe Biden is president, and yet everybody who's attached to Trump keeps getting persecuted because they want power forever and because we were so dangerous to the status quo. It's nonsense. It's a lot of nonsense.
They could have been anybody's, but they relied on me, the man who had to be raided in the morning, because I'm going to destroy the evidence. I've known about this for 2 years, Tucker. I could have destroyed the evidence a year. I didn't destroy the evidence because the evidence is exculpatory. It proves that the president and I and all of us are innocent. They're the ones who are committing. It's like projection. They're committing the crimes. Yeah.
Such as, what are those crimes, Rudy? And honestly, like, if they are exculpatory and they will exonerate Trump and his allies, then so be it. Let the investigation continue. Why build up this narrative that they're constantly attacking Trump's allies and while ignoring Hunter Biden, who is constantly just bashed underneath the magnifying glass of conservatism because they can't find enough political dirt on Joe Biden, so they have to attack his son. So be specific on what these crimes are, Rudy, because you could probably bring them in some kind of lawsuit further down the line if, these claims are valid.
Well, may I just interject to say it's, I think, literally projection. So from what we have read in the press, the Department of Justice wants to know whether you violated FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act, in representing foreign nationals, Ukrainians, for pay. You didn't register. They're saying that may have been a crime. We know for a fact that Hunter Biden did that. He didn't register under FARA. He represented Ukraine.
What did he need to what did he need to fill out for FARA? Because as far as I also remember, Hunter Biden never applied for a government position, unlike Rudy Giuliani. So there probably wasn't a requirement for Hunter Biden to fill out the FARA, in the same way that Michael Flynn also got in trouble for not divulging that he worked for a lobbying company in Ukraine when he applied for his position in Trump's cabinet, decided to not tell Congress or his application that he did that, so he violated it. So what position did Hunter Biden apply for that needed him to fill out a FARA? Is there any? Or are we just saying that he needed to fill one out because Rudy Giuliani had to fill one out? What are we talking about?
Ukrainians, he probably made a lot more than you did. He also represented Chinese nationals lobbying his dad. And he has not been charged with a FARA violation. Am I missing something here?
Yeah, you're missing, equal administration of justice, which is what we don't have anymore. The reality is the hard drive contains somewhere between a dozen or more violations of FARA that are spelled out completely, failure to register. The fact is it also...
That's 1 out of 12, which is the one that Tucker Carlson alleged, and he's just repeating. So if there's 12 more, if there's 12 total, then we still have 11 more violations to be told of that we're not getting. So again, we're just throwing the punching bag underneath the bus because, why think Rudy Giuliani did anything wrong if Hunter Biden is continually let go of doing of any accountability, which, again, these are all allegations that have no standing ground for actual criminal activity.
Spells out, as we now know, a clear violation of the Gun Act. The application is a straight-out fraud. He says, I'm not an addict. We have a picture of him 5 days before smoking a crack pipe behind the wheel of a car and then saying under oath that he's not an addict. And it's the left that gets all perturbed about people who are mentally unstable having guns. Well, he was unstable. He's been, unfortunately and tragically, I feel sorry for that part of Hunter Biden.
I'm really not going to comment on Hunter Biden illegally purchasing a gun or having one when he shouldn't have, because it's pretty common sense, and I'm pretty sure he's actually already faced accountability for that action that happened years ago. So again, it's almost as if if Hunter Biden had a speeding ticket a few years ago and they're like, how come he hasn't paid the fine for it? And it's just like, he probably already did. You're just not hungry into actually figuring out what repercussions he faced for at the time. You just want to keep bringing up the fact that he is a flawed human being who you want jailed for being Joe Biden's son.
Biden, I think his father exploited him. But the reality is he's still a danger to the public if he's driving an automobile or holding a gun. But they don't care about that. No, they come and send it to my apartment.
Wait a minute. I thought he was behind the steering wheel with a crack pipe 5 days before he bought the gun or lied on his gun application to get the gun. But now he's behind the wheel holding a gun while high on crack. Do you see the inconsistency level here of damning Hunter Biden? It's literally just because Rudy Giuliani knows that the conservative media has done the legwork in making conservatives hate Hunter Biden, and so he's using it. That's it. It's that simple.
When I'm willing to talk to them civilly myself, and second, I can tell you, I never ever represented a foreign national. In fact, I have in my contracts a refusal to do it because from the time I got out of being mayor,
what do you mean? What contracts did you have that said you refused to work for foreign diplomats or foreign officials whatsoever? What do you mean? What contracts, Rudy? What do you mean?
Lobby. Never did it to Bush, never did it to Obama, never did it with Trump. And I can prove it. Just give me an opportunity. But they won't. Instead, they had a breakdown. I wouldn't say breakdown, but smash on my doors.
So it went from knocking on the door at 6 a.m. to smashing his door to, no, not smashing him, but to hitting him really hard.
In a frightening way. Lucky I don't get frightened very easily. I handled them very professionally, and they handled me very professionally. I want to make that point. Also, Hunter, I am a lawyer who has prosecuted a lot more serious cases that have been prosecuted in the U.S. Attorney's Office since I left. And the reality is that that warrant is completely illegal. The only way you can get a search warrant is if you can show that there's some evidence that the person is going to destroy the evidence or is going to run.
That actually isn't a necessity to a warrant. And that's very fascinating that he's getting people, telling people that is the point of a warrant. It's really not. It's not. It's actually, needing more evidence for an investigation, and you need a justified reason why to search a suspect's or a witness's personal property. You actually only need a reasonable justification to do so, which can include the feeling that, or the suspicion that somebody's going to destroy evidence, but it doesn't have to be just that. That's crazy. He's a lawyer literally telling us what warrants don't do. Like, he knows exactly what warrants are for. He's a lawyer and a former mayor, so we do know that he knows better. But because he's on Tucker Carlson to defend himself, he knows he doesn't have to tell the truth.
Run away with the evidence. Well, I've had it for 2 years and I haven't destroyed it. And they also got it from the iCloud. So there was no justification for that warrant. It is an illegal, unconstitutional warrant, one of many that this Department of Injustice tragically.
It's funny, he can't say why it's an unconstitutional warrant when the Constitution actually requires warrants to search private property. So I would love to hear how this is unconstitutional, but we're just going to move on.
Has done, and it breaks my heart because I belong to the Justice Department, and I think I had a record that's a hell of a lot better than theirs.
Joe Biden said he didn't know, the Lincoln Project knew, the guys who covered up child molestation, but Joe Biden says he didn't know that this raid was coming. Do you take that at face value?
Maybe he doesn't remember. I'm not sure if he can retain anything for more than about, the time it takes to read it. But in any event, who cares if he knew or not? And the reality is how the Lincoln Project knowing means that they have a serious leak in a very important investigation. We have been warning them of that for 2 years. My lawyer, Bob Costello, has written to them 4 times to plug up the leaks. They've done nothing to do that.
So just to frame this, and may I interrupt you? I should have done this at the outset. I just want to make absolutely certain that we understand, our viewers understand, what it is the Justice Department says they're investigating. We've read it's a FARA violation. Is there something else? What have they said to you about what they're looking into?
They haven't said anything to me. They won't explain to me what they're looking into for 2 years. We've called them 5, 6 occasions, said, tell us what you're investigating. We'll come in and address it. No, just come in and talk to us. Tell us about your whole life, because that's ridiculous. And so I have to go as a lawyer on the search warrant. The search warrant is purportedly based on one single failure to file for representing a Ukrainian national or official that I never represented. I've never represented a Ukrainian national or official before the United States government. I've declined it several times. I've had contracts in countries like Ukraine. In the contract is a clause that says I will not engage in lobbying or foreign representation. I don't do it because I felt it would be too compromising. Here I am in the middle of representing the President of the United States on a charge that I believe he was innocent of.
Cool. So, the prosecutors here included Ukraine's then Prosecutor General Yuri Lutsenko. In interviews, Lutsenko has said he asked for Giuliani's help arranging a meeting with the U.S. Attorney General to discuss efforts to recover looted national assets. He also spoke with Giuliani about his clashes with the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Mary Yovanovitch. The Trump administration later removed Yovanovitch from her post. If Giuliani lobbied the Trump administration on behalf of Ukrainian figures, he might have been obligated to disclose that work. So he can say that he did nothing. That's fine. That's First Amendment, and that's part of the Constitution, innocent until proven guilty. But going on Tucker Carlson to completely distort what is going on does not tell me that he is acting in good faith, and does not scream innocence to me either in the court of public opinion. So we will see as more develops, but Rudy Giuliani is seriously covering his ass and Trump's ass. So
I had great passion about that. If you're a lawyer and you're representing an innocent man, there's no greater burden you can have. And my sole concentration, and I am so offended by the things they've said about me, my sole concentration from the beginning here, Tucker, was to find evidence that would prove what I knew, that he was innocent of Russian collusion and that he was innocent of doing anything improper. He did exactly what a president should do with the president of Ukraine. He asked him to investigate a vice president who violated our laws over and over again.
That's honestly amazing, is that he is still arguing that Trump did exactly what he was supposed to do, which was ask a foreign government to investigate his political opponent. Which he also used U.S. foreign aid, the money that we were going to send Ukraine, as the carrot on the stick in order to do so. So even though the Senate decided to not find Trump guilty, does not necessarily mean that he was not guilty of the act in itself, because the House of Representatives did find him guilty and worthy of an impeachment trial. So, you know, the polarization has a big effect here of whether or not you see Trump actually participating in illegal activity, asking for a foreign government to give him information on his domestic political opponent. Think if he actually did this directly with Russia in the way that we implicated him in 2016 with, you know, WikiLeaks and all his associates meeting with Russian officials to bring up dirt with Hillary Clinton. If this was more direct, where he was talking to Putin on the phone and said, I need you to find information on Joe Biden for me and Hunter Biden, this honestly probably would not have gone this far. Everybody would have immediately damned him because of how immediate Russians are compared to as opponents to the United States. Since the Ukraine is a little bit more ambiguous to most citizens, it doesn't look quite as clear of a picture. But just imagine if Trump, rather than talking to the president of Ukraine, was talking to either Xi Jinping from China or from Vladimir Putin in Russia. This would have been much more obvious, and he would have been impeached much quicker, mainly because U.S. citizens are very familiar with how the United States government views Russia and China. So, just saying.
30 years of the Biden crime family violating our laws, that is what is on the hard drive that they have censored. And that's why they want to put me in jail.
One of the great ironies is the Democratic...
Yeah, they want to put Rudy Giuliani in jail because he was so focused on Hunter Biden, not because they interacted with foreign agencies to find dirt on people who live in the United States for a political election, for a presidential election, nonetheless. Like, this is exactly what I would expect from people who tried to undermine the election once the results came in. This is exactly what I would expect.
Party is hysterical on the subject of Russia, in part because they've taken so much money from Ukraine, which of course fears Russia and has for an awful long time. They're being paid to hate Russia. But let me just ask you, so now they've taken your phone, they've got all your texts, they've got all your digital communications. So unless you've been in mass 12 hours a day for the last 5 years, like, is there anybody who could... No, it's a sincere question. Is there anybody who, if the Justice Department was out for you and they've got every text you've ever sent and every email, that they couldn't find something to charge you with? Do you think this is going to remain a FARA investigation, or could it get much bigger quickly?
I mean, now that they've gathered all their evidence from Rudy Giuliani, who knows how many others they may have to gather evidence from, but they're building a case. Of course, this is going to get much bigger.
Well, I think it should get much bigger. I think they should be investigated for blatantly violating my constitutional rights, the president's constitutional right.
Which they both could sue the FBI over. They could take that to the Supreme Court. So to say that there's criminal activity on one side but not pressing charges, that's crazy to me. That's honestly, like, you could do something about it. Otherwise, like, this is specifically to change the public opinion, to get conservatives who watch Tucker Carlson to feel sympathetic towards Rudy Giuliani and President Trump, which is not very hard to do because they've been doing that for 4 years now, 5 years almost. So honestly, this is nonsense. This is just a rambling from an old man who's on his last legs.
In the middle of the impeachment defense, they invaded, without telling me, my iCloud. They took documents that are privileged, and then they unilaterally decided what they could read and not read. So the prosecutors, the Justice Department, spied on me. And that is, if that is not taken seriously.
the departments of justice and the FBI have been like wiretapping. They've been sending informants in. They do undercover work. So like this whole idea of Rudy Giuliani being spied on, again, the victimhood of this guy is just beyond belief. None of these people could commit a crime without saying that they're being persecuted. Like they will scream the crucible because they're being targeted for whether or not they actually committed illegal activity, not just because of who they represent and what they believe. That's just nonsense words to get sympathetic points from the people who already sympathize from you.
If that doesn't result in their being sanctioned, the case being dismissed, and it's stopping, this is no longer a free. We might as well be in East Berlin before the wall fell. This is tactics only known in a dictatorship where you.
Do you see that? Is like the minute the power, like people in the positions of power feel the sense of accountability coming on them, all of a sudden we live in a dictator authoritarian world, because once people who hold positions of power are faced with accountability, democracy ends. Like amazing. That's some real elitist bullshit going on.
Seized a lawyer's records right in the middle of his representation of his client. You should be prosecuted and disbarred for that. You shouldn't be prosecuting somebody else.
I agree with that. I agree with that uncritically.
They're a disgrace to a great department. They're a disgrace to a great department.
And let's remind ourselves again when this investigation started 2 years ago under Bill Barr. So is Bill Barr supposed to be disbarred? Is he supposed to be prosecuted as well for beginning this investigation? Or is it just the FBI now who you're mad at because they had a warrant to search your stuff? Just like amazing. Just so amazing elitist bullshit going on. Ugh. All right, so after he went on Tucker Carlson to defend himself erratically, irrationally, and all over the place, throwing Hunter Biden under the bus because that's easier than actually defending your illegal activity, they then went into the morning where Tucker Carlson joined the Five to talk about this interview. Tucker Carlson, the guy who did the interview, here to reinforce what happened in the interview with 5 other members from Fox News. This is, wow.
So the FBI showed up the other morning at Rudy Giuliani's house. They came in with a warrant and took his electronic devices. He is the 3rd attorney who served former President Donald Trump to get that treatment. Interesting. We talked to the former New York City mayor about it at some length last night.
There was a big bang, bang, bang on the door, and outside were seven FBI agents.
Can you believe it? 7.
And they said, what are they? I said, those are Hunter Biden's hard drives. And they said, no.
You see the framing of that? Like it's pretty obvious why he's framing it like that. As if like an FBI agent wouldn't just be like simply, no, we don't need it. No, it's pretty obvious the way he's framing the way that they said no to make them sound like they're deliberately trying to avoid any evidence about Hunter Biden, even though there is 0 investigations open about Hunter Biden right now. So, like, it's pretty obvious why they would turn that down because it has no relevancy to the investigation that they're actually doing.
I said, are you sure you don't want them? I mean, the warrant...
Listen for the no here. Listen to it.
And they said, no. There is no justification for that warrant. It is an illegal, unconstitutional warrant.
Which he explains nothing about.
So Giuliani said he had no idea the raid was coming. One group who did know it was coming was the Lincoln Project, the Democratic Party campaign group, the guys who covered up for child molestation. You may remember them. They got an early notice from the Justice Department. They're kind of in on it.
And he's not going to specify how they got an early warning from the Justice Department. They're just picking a opponent to their political side, damning them, dehumanizing them, and throwing them under the bus because one of theirs is being targeted. So it's always this whataboutism going on here. And the idea of them being these, targets of persecution all the time, not because of illegal activity they could be indulging themselves in. No, it's because of who they are, which is dumb and ridiculous.
President of the United States was asked, and he said he had no idea the raid was coming.
Were you aware of that raid before it happened?
Like, honestly, it's very funny to me that, like, conservatives think that every piece of our institutions are as irrational as what they usually present as their arguments. Really, that's what they do. The system is just as inept as Fox News reports. You know, that's God.
I give him my word I was not. I made a pledge. I would not interfere in any way, order, or try to stop any investigation the Justice Department had underway. I learned about that last night when the rest of the world learned about it.
So on the basis of our...
I don't really buy Biden. You know, he may or may not have known about the raid before it happened, but I'm sure he was aware of the investigation since it was his Department of Justice taking over a previous administration's investigation. So I would have to say he at least knows some details of the investigation.
Justice system of justice itself is the equal application of it. Laws apply to everyone equally. The warrant said the FBI showed up at Giuliani's door because he had violated FARA. He'd been lobbying for people in Ukraine without registering as a foreign lobbyist. What's so interesting to me is we know for a fact, it's not speculation, that the president's son lobbied for Ukraine and did not register. He was paid an awful lot of money to lobby his dad. Again, that's not up for debate. We know that. He's admitted it.
None of that was true, and I'm not really going to get into why and how. So, you know, do your own research. None of that about Hunter Biden is true, and there's no evidence to back it up. But they'll say, oh, the mainstream media has been silencing it, and that's why they didn't take the hard drives. And it's just like, okay, you have an excuse for anything at this point.
How is this not unequal application of the law?
Well, I think he was working for a Ukrainian company, Tucker. I don't think he was lobbying. So, I mean, that's your take on it, but I don't think that's the government's take.
Juan, the token Democrat in the Five, actually just tells Tucker Carlson straight up, like, here we go again with this Hunter Biden stuff, and it's all steeped in misinformation.
I mean, I think it's important in this segment that we, clear all the smoke out of the room here, because it seems to me that Rudy Giuliani appears to be in very serious trouble. All this talk about, the prosecution's being unfair or it's not equal application of the law, it's a lot of smokescreen, and it's to play to the court of public sympathy. But this is not going to be on cable TV. He's going to be in a court of law, it looks like. It looks like they're going to bring an indictment against this man. And I just worry for him in that sense, because, when you think about it, we had reports out today in the Washington Post and from NBC saying that the Trump FBI warned Giuliani in 2019 that he was being used by, Russian, agents to spread dirt about Joe Biden, and they told him this was a danger to him. But he continued. And then he continued what you just described. He continued to lobby the Trump White House to get rid of Marie Yovanovitch. I don't know if I'm saying that quite right, but she was the U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine without registering as a lobbyist, and that's what that's what the warrant was for.
And the unfortunate thing here is that Juan is speaking from a reasonable place. I think he's actually observing the evidence and isn't taking partisan lines, but you could say that he isn't because he usually sides with the Democrats. He's supposed to be that balance in the Five. But there's 4 other people here that are going to disagree with everything Juan said and reinforce what Fox News wants you to know about this specific issue. So although Juan does provide some reasonable and rational thought to this discussion, he's going to be immediately turned down and will not speak for the rest of this segment, while the others fill the rest of it with their rhetorical nonsense. So
now I'm not on the show much, so I'm not sure the rules. So rather, I'm going to ask your follow-up to the great Katie Pavlich. So Katie, Juan has just said, and you're hearing other people say this, that the difference is that Hunter Biden wasn't lobbying for anyone in Ukraine. Then what was he doing if he wasn't lobbying? If he wasn't lobbying his father specifically, then the vice president, was he applying his deep knowledge of, Eastern European energy business practices? Why would they have hired Hunter Biden in Ukraine except to lobby? Sincere question.
Why did they hire, wasn't John Kerry's son also a part of the board members? Like, why did they hire anybody at that point? Like, honestly, if you have to bring in Hunter Biden's employment to this specific company into question, then why aren't you questioning everybody's employment to this specific energy company? Or are we doing the same thing that Rudy Giuliani did at the beginning of his interview, which is pick the conservative punching bag and throw them under the bus because I think they're doing illegal activity and yet they're targeting me? Coincidence?
That's precisely why Hunter Biden was hired by a foreign oil and gas company while his father was the vice president in charge of the Ukraine profile. I mean, that's the entire point. It's influence peddling. It's buying someone off literally to gain influence inside the United States government as...
Really? Was it Hunter Biden getting hired, or was it the fact that Biden wanted a change in the prosecution within the Ukrainian government? Which one was it? Or were both of these part of the deal to get Ukraine its foreign aid? Or are we just cherry picking information because there isn't actual real illegal activity to pinpoint anything on, so we just pick and choose which one to use at the time? Which one?
That, you know, his father is the vice president. And when it comes to equal application of the law and this idea that these agents apparently, according to Rudy Giuliani, didn't want Hunter Biden's hard drives, there is evidence of crime on those hard drives that we have seen. I mean, whether it's lying on the background check form, applying for a firearm, whether it's doing drugs.
Like, they honestly run, like, they're like, he's committed so many illegal activities. And all they got is he worked in Ukraine. He worked in China. He bought a gun when he wasn't supposed to, and he was addicted to drugs. And they keep talking about as if there's more things than these four things. It's so exhausting.
And a number of other things that are on that laptop that we can't even really show on TV because it's...
Like, honestly, too, Juan, you know, there's only been one pundit to speak so far, but Juan actually stayed on point and target here talking about Rudy Giuliani. And immediately, this pundit, who I'm not familiar with her name, continues talking about Hunter Biden.
So atrocious, and lots of illegal things are happening there. And so, yes, the number one reason why he was hired was, of course, to lobby on behalf of Ukraine to influence policy because of who he was connected to. And he even said during that interview that the reason he got hired is because his last name was Biden. And that's why he was hired.
It's amazing. Just because there are, you know, hundreds of countries in the world, but both these guys worked with Ukraine. So, Jesse Waters, this is by our count, the third, at least the third.
Then how come there wasn't a single investigation started by Bill Barr's and Donald Trump's Department of Justice? If there is so much validity to these allegations against Hunter Biden, how come there was not a single investigation brought up by Trump administration and Bill Barr? Why?
Attorney who worked personally for Donald Trump, who had communication with Trump, grabbed by the Justice Department. Are you sensing a theme here?
Yeah, I don't think Trump's ever going to be able to hire another attorney. That's a death wish. But to Juan's point, Juan, he did lobby.
I don't know if that was the joke that he intended it to be. Saying that, you know, if you want to be Trump's lawyer, you have a death wish. I don't know if that was what he meant to be, because that can also imply that Trump does so much illegal stuff that you have to take that in consideration when you're becoming one of his lawyers. I know he meant it in the implication that, you know, if you become a Trump lawyer, you'll be targeted by the deep state, but that's not the interpretation I got.
His dad. We saw the emails. He set up meetings with Burisma officials. That's already on the record. So that's case closed. When I saw this raid, I thought to myself, this is just payback for Rudy blowing up the president's son's scandal. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to go in there and they're going to seize his electronics and they're going to have a roadmap to see how the scandal happened, and then they can mop it up. There's no way.
Again, the investigation started 2 years ago. Just I can't really I can't stress that enough. So yep.
Hunter's ever going to get charged with anything by Biden's department.
Wait, 2 years ago? That was before they actually even brought up Hunter Biden, really. Like, that was when they were starting to look for information on Hunter Biden and Trump, or Hunter and Joe Biden. Like, that was right when they started looking at that information, but it was started underneath the Trump administration's Attorney General William Barr. So, like, oh man, just ignoring context. Good stuff.
Justice, and everybody knows that now. And everybody also knows for a FARA violation, you don't kick down doors and seize people's computers. You do that for drug traffickers or flight risks. You don't do that for a FARA violation, which is basically you let your maybe license get expired or your registration on your car.
I'm pretty sure that if you violate or are suspected of violating laws in the United States, that actually justifies the application of a warrant. So what are we talking about? We only do some crimes get a warrant, not all of them.
Lapses. If anything, you might have to pay a small fine. But Mueller, he's been using this against the Trump people to sink his teeth in, and then
for most crimes, you usually just pay a fine. From this article here specifically, let's see here. Imad Zuberi, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that name wrong, a political fundraiser who attracted attention for large donations to Trump's inaugural committee, was sentenced in February to 12 years in prison for violation of the Foreign Agents Act, which is the FARA, and other crimes. So it's actually pretty normal for someone to face jail time for lying to the government about your foreign lobbying adventures. So, cool. Just more lying.
He lays perjury traps. And this is what Joe and Obama did to everybody. Remember, they targeted the Tea Party. They took out Petraeus and Chris Christie with fake scandals because they were going to run for president. And then they sent undercover agents into the Trump campaign.
Chris Christie is still looking to run for president in 2024. So they didn't do that to mark Chris Christie as a political opponent. They did it because he did illegal things.
Campaign and wiretapped them with documents.
If you remember, Chris Christie actually was charged underneath the Trump administration while he was president. So
warrants. And Biden himself cooked up the fling sting. And you're not seeing a pattern here? I mean, come on, these guys are brutal. These guys are rough.
So, Greg, do you think the next time the FBI raids your apartment, they'll tip off the Lincoln Project before they do?
I don't know. That is a good question. I will say this. Joe Biden says he was not aware.
Before we get to his thing, I got to do a brief intermission. I'll be right back. Thank you for allowing that brief pause. Unfortunately, I do not have the bladder fortitude that I once did. And that might have been TMI for you, but now we continue on with Greg Gutfield's analysis
Of the Giuliani apartment search. I would probably say that's probably true because he probably also wasn't aware of the date and where he was and what happened to his pants. And I do not blame the FBI for not wanting to touch Hunter's hardware. And for obvious reasons, they didn't want to catch anything. These aren't just computer viruses all over that keyboard. But to the bigger point,
just immediately starting his analysis with just complete ad hominem attack on people's character. So, yeah, this is just top-notch stuff coming from Fox News, per usual.
We have to remind people who Rudy is and was. I mean, this is a guy who saved the greatest city that once was the greatest city of all time. But he perhaps...
Saved them from what? And saved them how? What do you mean?
Might be the greatest mayor, I think, in history. There's a lot of people you see on TV.
Like, this is honestly what you say when you just want people to defend other people without knowing why you're defending them. He saved New York City. From what and how? He was the greatest mayor of all time. Compared to who? Why? None of these things matter, because all you're supposed to know is that he saved New York and that he's the greatest mayor of all time, and I can't believe that they're targeting him in this way. That's literally all you're being told and all you need to know. Oh, and fuck Hunter Biden, of course.
TV now, a bunch of liberals that are trashing him, who wouldn't probably be here in New York if it wasn't for the fact that New York was made safe and made to be the #1 tourist attraction in the world. I know this has nothing to do with whatever happened in that apartment, but we're living in a funhouse mirror of America when a guy did so much for this country is being ransacked, and meanwhile Hunter Biden is going to Tulane to teach undergrad.
Like, honestly, what are we supposed to do in a country who argues after somebody commits an illegal act, right? They do something illegal, something that is wrong by law, right? And the defense is, he's done so much for this country. At what point in the existence of this country are we at when you can easily defend power by saying they did it all in service of the country? Because honestly, that was the defense during the Nuremberg trials against the Nazis. So where are we at on that scale?
How to buy crack on a street corner.
Nicely put.
Thanks.
Just ahead.
Yeah, nicely put. Yeah. Let's just allege that Hunter Biden is selling crack cocaine to kids with absolutely no proof. That's a good way to end this segment. Cool. So, in my continuing quest of wondering whether or not conservatives can engage in civil discourse with good faith, we come to the final segment here, brought to us by Adam Carolla and PragerU. And I think the video is called Who Has Privilege? Let's do it.
Privilege. What's the...
Because they would argue that, Hunter Biden has privilege. His father is president and seems to avoid accountability. Rudy Giuliani does not have privilege because he's had a search warrant against him and seems to be investigated by the FBI. This isn't going to talk about any of that, though. It's really not. But I do think it's very interesting because this conversation about Hunter Biden, about Rudy Giuliani, does kind of float in the sphere of privilege. But this one has a very different kind of privilege in mind. So let's do it.
The obsession with privilege. It's driving me nuts. Not only didn't I have privilege, I don't even know how to spell it. I think there's a D in there somewhere, isn't there? If I told you a story about a kid who grew up...
Like, isn't that amazing? They chose Adam Carolla, who I guess is a comedian, and uses a joke to say, I'm so dumb, I don't even know how to spell privilege. Why are we listening to you then? Why are we watching a video on Prager University, a fake university, for you to teach us what privilege is when you don't know how to spell it? Like, this is, I know it was supposed to be a joke, but this is also supposed to be an educational video. So, like, again, what point are we at in this country?
Poor, product of divorce, did a lot of dumpster diving. Sister ran away at age 14, welfare and food stamps. If I told you that kid was black, you'd go, well, yeah, that's because of systemic racism. But if I told you that kid was me, you'd go, what? What are we doing? What happened to your privilege?
Yeah. The left is always believing that white people cannot be poor because they're white. There's just this belief throughout the entire sphere of leftist ideology that white people are never poor. They never have broken households. They never suffer anything that anybody else suffers. No, they're always so privileged that everything is handed to them immediately. I'm lying. That's a joke. It's not true. That's not the encompassing thought. You don't immediately see a white person on food stamps and go, what? I thought this was America. No, there's still classism going on in this country where if you're poor, you have to live pretty rough. and it does cross. It does cross race, gender, religion. There's people of all religions, all genders, all races, all sex preferentials who are poor and disadvantaged. But there seems to be statistics to show us that certain people are disproportionately poor and disadvantaged. And that's usually where you start applying some critical thinking. But I don't think Adam Carolla is known for his critical thinking.
The real white privilege isn't privilege. It's knowing that nobody cares about you, good or bad. No one's going to do anything for you because you're white, and no one's going to do anything against you because you're white. I'll give you an example. When I get pulled over by a cop, I assume it's either because I was speeding or the cop's an overficious jerk. But either way, my skin color doesn't play in.
I feel like when you are white, your skin color doesn't come into focus very much at all, because there's not a lot of implicit biases that kind of work against white people in this country. There has been plenty of evidence throughout the history of this country that shows that implicit and explicit bias towards black people, brown people, and the various other colors of people usually are disadvantaged in this country in a myriad of ways. So that's when their skin color comes into focus, because they're not being treated like every other citizen inside the country. Especially when you had Jim Crow laws back in the 1900s that specifically favored white people immensely over black people.
If I was black, I'm assuming that it was driving while black or that he was profiling me. Let me give you another example.
And I think those are valid thoughts to have. You can still, I don't like that he assumes that black people aren't going to wonder if they were speeding or if they have a taillight out or anything like that. But of course, it might go through their mind, because it is a problem that they got profiled by the cop. That's a totally valid place for a black person's thoughts to go, because it happens. But to say that those are the only thoughts going through their head, that's a little racist.
Example of the white privilege I'm talking about. The privilege of not obsessing over privilege. I had a neighbor call the police on me during the day, during the middle of the week, when I was doing a construction project, because our phone lines got crossed. So I picked up the phone to call Anawalt Lumber. My neighbor picked up the phone. I said, "Oh, sorry, I think our lines got crossed somehow." Next thing I know, a police cruiser rolled up to my home. Now, if I was black, I would have no choice but to think that was racially motivated. I mean,
saying that was racially motivated. Like, do you really think that all black people instantly think that? Do you really?
Why else would your neighbor call the cops on you because your phone lines got crossed, unless in fact you're black? And as a matter of fact, I'm not even black, and I think it was a racist incident. Do you get it? Whites do have privilege, but not the privilege the race hustlers are selling. I don't think people really drill down enough on this. I've had horrible things happen to me my entire life. I've had school teachers and counselors that were horrible. I've had construction foremen who treated me like crap. I've had program directors who treated me like crap.
Yes, all of these things can happen no matter what race, skin, like all of those variety of intersectional characteristics of identity. None of those can matter to how people treat you at times. Maybe it's because your personality is generally an asshole, is why a lot of these people treated you this way. But there has been evidence shown throughout history that people of certain skin colors or genders or religions, or even ideologies, that have been persecuted because of those things. So, just because you've also had it rough doesn't mean that people aren't judged by the characteristics of their character.
And the good news is I'm white, so I just know they're a-holes, not racist.
Oh, I like how he comes with the it was them and not me argument there. It's definitely them, not me. They're the assholes. That's why they were mean to me. Everyone was mean to me because they're assholes. Yeah.
Why do we want anyone worrying about someone else's privilege? Who cares? This is America. You make your own breaks.
That's why people care, is because America constantly claims that anybody can pursue the American dream. But then when you see the roadblocks ahead of you because of your race, gender, ideology, then you realize, oh, that's kind of a lie. That's why people care, Adam. That's why.
Anyway, isn't the goal not to judge a person by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character? I think I heard that somewhere. What's the guy's name? Marty? Anyway.
Oh my God, what a class A joke for getting Martin Luther King's name, which, I don't know, an odd flex of white privilege or of being white is not remembering Martin Luther King's name, or at least for the sake of a joke, even though they keep co-opting that speech over and over and over again. Although they accused Martin Luther King at the time of the same exact thing that they accuse Black Lives Matter of today. So that's good, because after the government murders you, conservatives will co-opt your speeches for their own political agenda. Cool.
Privilege means you have it better than most, not that you have it better than some. How about tall people? Tall people have an advantage over short people. Thin people have an advantage over fat people. Attractive people, you're welcome, have an advantage over the homely. There are always going to be people lower than you on the totem pole, no matter.
But that doesn't mean that our society should disproportionately reward them because they're taller, because they're skinnier, because of whatever reason that you would disproportionately reward someone over someone else because they do not have those attributes. That doesn't make it okay just because you have that advantage that our society should reward you so.
No matter what color your skin is. Wait a minute, are we allowed to say totem pole? I feel like that's racist.
Another joke that is just a bad joke. Like, oh, God damn it. Just like him being so unaware of how to spell privilege, of Martin Luther King, of whether or not totem pole is okay, is all supposed to be a joke, but just even highlights why he is the wrong person to be having this discussion.
Every minority person living in the United States in 2021 is doing better than people living in the Congo, Bangladesh, or many other places around the world.
That's not something that you can be proud of. Like, hey, we're doing better than third world countries. Yeah, because they're poor as fuck. Because their governments are beyond even corruption of, like, our understanding. They're steeped in civil wars. Like, are you kidding me? Are you seriously saying you have it better than a third world country? Yeah, no shit, dude. We have a fuck ton of money here and a bunch of luxuries.
If you don't believe me, then why they're all trying to get here? Do the math. We're a systemically racist country that people are trying to kill themselves. They're literally risking their lives trying to get into the systemically racist country.
Do you really think, Adam Carolla, do you really think that immigrants and refugees are fully aware of the politics and culture that goes into the United States? Or do they only see the image that's projected around the world, that we're the bastion of freedom, that we're opulence, and that we have the American dream where anybody can make it? Do you think they're fully aware of every domestic issue that goes on here? Such as, the opposition to critical race theory, or even the dehumanizing language that goes into refugees? Do you think they're fully aware of everything that goes on in the United States before they even try to come here? Is there even actual proof that everybody who is coming to the United States border even wants to stay in the United States and isn't trying to go to Canada? Do we know this for sure, that everybody is coming over here thinking, oh yeah, cops disproportionately kill blacks and Latinos every year in the United States, but I want to go there because it has equal opportunity for everyone? You think that's what they're thinking? You think that's what's going on in their mind? Or is it that, fuck, my country is killing itself and I have no food or money to help my child survive, and America keeps saying it's the land of opportunity, so I'm going to go there for some opportunity? What do you think is more true, Adam?
Let's just say this country was a facility. And the facility was systemically racist. And every year, people died trying to hop the fence and climb the wall to get into the facility. People of color? Would that make sense? The great news is that if you're willing to bust your hump, there's no better country to do it in. So maybe we should stop obsessing on skin color or gender or sexual proclivities and get on with the hump busting. You know,
So my thing is if we're supposed to get over race, gender, sexual proclivities, why is it that Republicans who hold office are constantly putting out legislation that works against people who are of specific races, specific gender identities, and specific sexual proclivities? Why do we keep having these legislations be brought in, proposed to become law, and we're supposed to just ignore them? Weird position to take, Adam.
what would fix all this nonsense? A little gratitude. You got up this morning.
You know what would fix everybody complaining about the flaws of America is if they just woke up and were grateful that they're here. That would fix all of those problems. There wouldn't be systemic racism in policing or in housing or in voting, and there wouldn't be anti-trans bills across the nation if everybody just woke up grateful. Like, dumb. That is a dumb position to take. Like, I am grateful that I am born in the United States rather than China. Personally, I am grateful for that. But that doesn't change the flaws or the discrimination that is built into the system that needs to change. That doesn't change it at all. So while I do wake up grateful that I can wake up in America and do this podcast without being sent to prison, but honestly, things could be better.
You put your shoes on. Your fridge was full. You hugged your kids. You said goodbye to your wife. You said hello to your girlfriend.
That was, the doing was a just kidding because, again, Adam Carolla is supposed to be a comedian.
Gratitude for living in the best country in the world at the best time to live in the best country in the world. Whatever.
Yeah, of course we do have, higher, our mortality rate, we are living in the best time, objectively speaking about survival and quality of life. But there's no quantifiable evidence whatsoever that the United States is the best country in the world. And I would bet my bottom dollar that if you go to any country, you will find people who will say, my country is the greatest in the world or the best. Like, that is probably everywhere, even if horrifying things are happening. So, yeah, I am grateful for being in the United States, but to an extent, because there is certainly things that it could focus more on, such as working class individuals, and less on corporatism. So there's plenty of criticism to be had here. You can have gratitude. It's a healthy, normal emotion to feel, but absolute, unconditional gratitude, that sounds like a regime that just really wants docile citizens and doesn't want any resistance whatsoever.
Whatever your skin color is, there's no better country than the United States to call your home.
Except for anti-Asian hate crimes has been on the rise since 2020, like significantly. So that's not a true statement either, Adam.
I'm Adam Carolla for Prager University.
Black people are still 3 times more likely to be shot by police than white people, Adam. So, again, not a true statement. And we have a massive humanitarian crisis at our border, imprisoning people for merely searching for a better place to live. Doesn't sound like a sound argument here, because we're targeting many people on many different fronts. So, if you want to continue waking up grateful in America because it's willing to acknowledge its flaws and changes, join me for the next episode on Tox News, where we will try to do just that. This has been this episode. What a terrible, terrible, toxic episode. I am sorry, but that's right-wing media for you. Find me on Twitter at ToxinPod, ToxnPod. Like the video if you're on YouTube. Like, subscribe, dislike, comment, do what you want, share it. If you're on podcasts, which it can be found on all platforms, rate it, review it, share it, do all kinds of stuff. And yeah, let's see. Do I have any? Yeah, that's it. I'm not going to tell you to go do anything. Just enjoy the rest of your day and be grateful that, you're doing well if you are. You know, I don't know how to close this one. This has just been a jumbled mess, but you know, hopefully we have more developments on Matt Gaetz and Rudy Giuliani at some point, and then maybe someday there will be a substantial nutritional conversation that we'll have on this podcast. But as long as I'm covering conservative media, I doubt it. But you know, it is what it is. If you're still listening, I have this bonus clip for you. Here's Michael Flynn forgetting the words to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I want you to hear, not just listen, I want you to hear every single word of the Pledge of Allegiance. That is our pledge to each other, that is our pledge to this country. It's a Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America. So put your hand over your heart, take your hats off there. Take your hats off, that's an order, right? Place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, indivisible, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
An absolute classic moment for a self-proclaimed patriot. Forgetting the pledge. Amazing.